You don't have to tell me something too nice, but I'm just curious, what's the first sort of words that come to mind when you say lobbying? Can everyone access the Mentimeter?
Just, do you have the number, like the?
Yeah, so I'm gonna exit for like a quick second and put it in the chat.
Yeah, okay.
Nice, and then we can go to the Mentimeter, because yeah, so basically you'll see it. You can click on this thing and you can basically yeah, just the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. I'm gonna stop sharing for one moment and then I'll reshare when we have our results, but it can be, and yeah, like I said, one word, first things. Okay, I'm going to reshare. I see a couple of responses, but don't be shy. Okay, I'm gonna reshare now. Okay. So we see big companies, decisions, great, power. Yes, conflict of interest, association, cash, great. Perfect, everyone keep going and I'll show you the results in just a second. Okay. So yeah, we can see a lot of good words. So there's good things and bad things, right? We have bought influence. That's probably the most traditional sense of lobbying. From private to public. That's very interesting. House of Cards. Somebody's been watching their Netflix. I love that. Sharks. Someone's maybe been watching Shark Takes. But then on the other side, we see these other things that maybe they sound a little bit bad, right? But there's ideas, decision-making, strategy. And part of what we do at the Good Lobby is we show you, so all of those things are probably true, but the same way that maybe these sharks or these big companies and private interests, the same way that they use the tools, you have similar tools. So that brings me to my next question, which we can also find on the same Mentimeter, which is, I'm gonna just skip a few slides because we'll come back to these. Which is, who does lobbying? Who are the groups that you think of when you think of lobbying? We already see some with, you know, big corporations, but are there any people that maybe you think of as lobbyists who might not be traditional? And you can use the same chat.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, who does lobbying? So when you think of the people who are lobbyists, who do you think of? Again, it can be the first word that comes to mind. It doesn't have to be too hard of a question, even though it's a kind of hard question. But who, when you think of a lobbyist, who do you see? Private companies. Okay. Who else? Companies, right? Okay. This is why we do this exercise, right? Because we have an idea of what a lobbyist might look like. Politicians, tycoons, that's a good word. Corporations, car companies. These are all good answers. Like I said, this is the idea of, right, who we think does lobbying. So I see more associations, that's good. Polluters, yes, there's definitely a group of people that are polluting, probably. Pharma, very big lobbyists. As I said, I'm American, so, you know, we have plenty of those. But this is part of the reason we do this exercise, is to sort of think of, you know, these are how we imagine lobbyists. Let's see who else. Civil society, there we go. Somebody's feeding me a bone.
What's it, tycoons?
Yes.
What is tycoons? What does it mean?
Icons.
Tycoons.
Oh, tycoons. Okay, a tycoon is kind of like an old American word for someone who used to basically have a monopoly. So like the people that used to have all the railroad money were tycoons.
Tycoons, okay.
It's not a word we use a lot now, but I think we still have it. You could basically call Zuckerberg a tycoon of tech. So this is great. So part of why I wanted to do this is to say, so we have a very sort of set mentality of what exactly lobbying is. And that's why now I'll dive back into my presentation and we can stop. But now we'll talk a little bit more about what lobbying basically can be. So lobbying at the end of the day is really just, it's an act, right? It's the activity of trying to persuade someone. It tends to be a politician, but it can be lots of different types of people, to support a law or a rule. So we have a very bad image, right? We have the idea of these tycoons or pharma, a lot of the things we talked about. But part of the thing we try to do with the Good Lobby is explain that you can use the same tools of just basically persuading for very different outcomes. So another question I like to ask, and you can put your answer in the chat, we won't go back to Mentimeter, but do you think that Greta Thunberg is a lobbyist in your mind? And you can say yes or no, or I don't know, but you can put just a quick answer in the chat. Okay, no, yes, okay, already polemic. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's more to think about what does it mean to persuade someone to change a policy, right? And who does it? Activist, that's good. We'll dive into that in a minute. What does it mean to be an activist versus a lobbyist versus an advocate? Great. So all of these things are bringing up good points, which is that there's multiple ways to basically persuade people in power to change their minds. And so when we think about lobbying, we think about these guys, we think about the bad guys, Shell or Coca-Cola, basically looking down. But what we do at the Good Lobby is we try to show you that citizens can also do the same things, because obviously we vote, or I hope that you vote, because that's one way of participating politically. But in between all these elections, there are still decisions being made. And these are the moments that we'll go through pretty soon. These are the moments where you still need to be basically engaging with policymakers in the same way that these other corporations or tycoons are also engaging. In between elections, we as citizens still have rights, and we as citizens should still be engaging with our policymakers. You lobby for lobbying. I am lobbying for lobbying. It's a nice move. I'm lobbying for lobbying, but again, lobbying to me doesn't necessarily mean, as we'll dive into, it doesn't mean that you're working for a pharma company. It just means that you have a dialogue that's open with politicians. And that is why, as the Good Lobby, we are citizen lobbyists. And it's not necessarily that we're sitting around, having fancy cocktails with politicians. It's more to say that we believe that you should be in an open dialogue where you're talking with politicians, you're influencing the political system in a way that is working for all of us, whether it is to preserve the mountains or whether it is to have a social innovation project. It doesn't have to be big pharma, and it doesn't mean you have to be at a table with a bunch of politicians. It's more just being basically an active citizen. So long story short, because we have 30 minutes, these are just some of the people we work with, which are not all big bad lobbyists. We're actually much more on the other side of the spectrum. We work mostly with small NGOs. We match them with lawyers. We work with some of these bigger foundations. And at the end of the day, we're trying to basically democratize access to power. So does anyone have questions or comments? Does anyone want to tell me how crazy the words I said just are? Feel free to put it in the chat or also to raise your hand.
Yes, I do have a question. At what kind of level do you work, like with more local politicians or local organizations, national or state organizations, or even European organizations?
We work at multiple levels, and as the Good Lobby, despite our name, we're not actually the ones that are necessarily doing the lobbying, but what we do is we do basically strategy advice, and then a lot of what we do is matching smaller NGOs, so mostly regional or national, and we match them with lawyers. So we were founded by 2 international lawyers, which I should have mentioned, and so a lot of what we do is basically putting pro bono assistance with local NGOs. So in that regard, we work pretty regionally or nationally. And then on a strategy level, a lot of what I do with our founder, Alberto Alemano, is basically giving advice to how to do things like EU public consultations or freedom of information requests. So it's a bit more at an EU level, but we don't directly lobby. We take NGOs or foundations and we give them advice about how to access. Yes, I see 2 hands.
Ludovic and then Ruben.
Yes, Ludovic.
Thank you. Short question. Do you
Maybe you can write it in the chat, Ludovic.
Do you work already with youth councils, and which one? And if yes, what kind of method do you use with them? You don't hear me?
You were breaking up at the beginning, but I think I heard your question about youth councils. So a lot of what we do.
Are you working with youth councils already, and if yes, which one, and with which method?
Yeah, so a lot of what we do with youth is kind of what I'm doing now, but sometimes on a more in-depth basis. So we do a lot of trainings and sort of partnerships with groups like the European Green Foundation, but for their EGOT days, we work with European Youth Parliament, European Youth Forum. A lot of what we're doing is sort of like this, where it's sort of trainings, but then we also can accompany them if they have a particular cause. This is where it comes back to pro bono. We can match them with a case. So if you come to me as a youth organization and say, we're really excited about this, public petition we're launching, but we need a real lawyer who can help us sort out how exactly we're going to send it to the commission. That's the type of work where we can match you with someone and sort of follow your case. We also work with groups like Voters Without Borders, which is not necessarily a youth organization, but they're a new organization, and we support them by basically being on their board, giving them advice, trainings, etc. So I hope that answers the question.
So then I understand correctly that you're not actually
Yes, thank you.
that you're not directly lobbying, but rather teaching people on how to lobby for themselves.
Yes, and lobbying is, we use the word intentionally to be a little bit polemic, shall I say? Like I said, we're definitely not a lobbyist. Basically our whole thesis is that we just want people to be excited or engaged in the political process. You don't even have to be excited. I'm often very not excited about political things that are happening, but all we want is for people to feel like they have the tools to basically change that, rather than sitting around and waiting for a politician to change it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the real question for me is then, what's your advice, or what kind of power source do we have? Just our democratic vote, or what's the source of our power here as normal citizens, with not having capital or a lot of money to support our demands?
Actually a perfect segue. So I'm going to take the opportunity to introduce you to our toolkit, which I won't say it's a pure source of power, but I mean, the source of power is that there actually are a lot of tools available that are the same for you as they would be for a giant politician. You might have a different budget, but there are actually a lot of tools available, especially in Europe, for people to actually lodge political, basically, dissent. So this is a perfect segue, and I hope I'll answer your question. And if I haven't answered it as thoroughly as you'd like, then we can circle back at the end. But what we're basically going to do today is exactly that. We're going to talk about the tools, essentially, which I understand. And it's actually great you have so many questions, because it's true. Like, I want you guys to ask me the hard things. I'm not here to sort of sell you a box. It's more just, and it's great you guys are so involved already, but it's more to say that there are actually things that are available, whether you're young, old, it doesn't even matter. I'm currently working on a campaign with someone from my hometown in the Rocky Mountains who's like 60, but we're all using the same tools, right? And a lot of us think they're sort of stuck for old politicians, but we can actually access them as individuals. So we'll talk a little bit about this toolkit. Then we're going to make a better PowerPoint. We're going to do a workshop, which is diving better into these toolkits. And then I will have you split into groups, because as we've already seen, I'm really interested in hearing what you guys care about and seeing how you would apply the toolkit to your own work, because it seems like you already clearly have some missions and some things. So again, it's a very short workshop. So I want to emphasize that if you guys have questions, I'm going to have to leave around 8, as will you, but you're welcome to then follow up with a good lobby, because part of what we like to do is to hear from people who are working on the ground. So let's do a sort of a little mini deep dive today. Let's talk about the real projects, and then we'll save questions if possible towards the end, and we can see where we get. Is that fine with everyone? Cool. And I hope I answered questions. Like I said, don't shy away from the hard ones. So if at the end of the workshop I haven't answered this, dig in. But yes, let's start. Okay, in the spirit of time. So basically, to answer that exact question, what power do citizens have? Our founder, who is Alberto Alemano, he's the chair of EU law at HEC Paris, which you may know. And he also is just a pretty well-known academic and lawyer. So he's written a book called Lobbying for Change. And we're going to send you the slides, so don't stress about writing down every little detail or anything. But these are basically our 10 steps, which are applicable whether you're 16 and living in a small town, or whether, like I said, whether you're 65 and you're trying to launch your own campaign. They're applicable to pretty much everything. Even me, who has 2 masters, I still kind of come back to these steps. And we won't have time today to go into them in great detail, but I will encourage you at the end of the session to come back to these, because it really walks you through basically from everything from picking your subject, which you might already know. You might have a cause that you're very, very passionate about. and then doing your homework, which you're probably tired of hearing if you're all students, but it's still very important, even in the working world, to really do a proper review and really be well read. And then going into stakeholder mapping, building coalitions, which is part of the reason that we participate in sort of, organizations like this, meeting other people who care about your cause, but might live in a slightly different place. Raising money, which is the $1 million question, no matter where we are. And no matter how far you are in your career, you're always gonna have to sort of polish your fundraising skills. Media, which I think you guys could probably teach me about. I think, I think that's probably some of the ways that I'm most inspired by grassroots campaigns is their media outreach, but there's always different ways to engage with journalists, to engage with social media, to engage perhaps with different types of media. Meetings, which we are actually going to go into today, because I think meeting with policymakers is sometimes sort of the scariest thing. So, you have an amazing campaign and you get the attention of policymakers, but how do you actually, go in there with your head held high, especially with COVID? So you're going into a Zoom meeting. So we will touch on that later. And then of course, always just staying vigilant and sticking to the rules. And as I said, I could spend probably, a whole day walking you through these steps, which is why I encourage you to sort of go back to them at the end of the session and come to me with questions. We'll also send you a follow-up material that kind of goes through these in a bit more detail. So I won't go through all 10 steps. I'm going to go into more detail in the next part about the different avenues, which is where we really talk about our toolkit. So yeah, the avenues are in some ways, it's the way you engage with policymakers. So we'll go very briefly through basically the 5 avenues, and we'll start with So we'll start with campaigns, legislative. The idea is that you've already chosen your topic, right? You have this thing you're super passionate about. You've kind of picked a way to go about it. You have your action, and then you have to decide, which avenue am I going to take? So for now, again, I apologize, it's very quick. We're recording it and we'll send you the slides, but very quick briefing through the avenues. And like I said, you can take notes, but don't stress too much about every word because we'll send you everything. So the first avenue, which is probably the most well-known, is campaigning, right? We say campaigning about a lot of things. We could tend to think of a campaign as this overarching umbrella, but in the end of the day, this has much more to do with the digital campaigning, street campaigning. It's really when you're being most visible. So campaigns are great. They're super cool. And I think we've seen a lot of successful ones, whether it be from Greta Thunberg or Black Lives Matter. They're really a good way of sort of getting your policymakers' attention. But the idea is that sometimes you're going to have a campaign, but it's very good to have some follow-up strategies to a campaign. So I would say it's a good first step, but you should always ask yourself, then what? Can I have a meeting with a policymaker? What happens if my campaign is super attention grabbing? So campaigns are a very good way to start, but they're not necessarily, a lot of people think that the advocacy ends with your campaign, where at the beginning, I would say it's really the beginning of your advocacy. So we have this awesome campaign, we're getting traction. Then what? As these are just, examples, and we won't go too in depth. Like I said, I think Black Lives Matter or Fridays for the Future are a good example. These are a couple of things. There was a campaign to end deporting asylum seekers in Australia. There's ending things for the roaming charges, which our founder was involved in. But I don't think I need to tell you about campaigns because I feel like you guys probably have a bunch in mind. So I won't spend too much time on that. Legislative is slightly more technical, but it's also very effective. So legislative campaigns could be a formal petition, which will differentiate that from an informal petition, citizens initiative. So for example, a legislative campaign we've gone through was in Slovakia. They launched a formal petition, which is a petition you actually submit to the government. It's not just one you necessarily have on change.org, but it's one you formally submit. And the aim was to basically have less toxic substances in the water and soil in Bratislava because they were having some major issues. And the European Commission, because they had such a successful petition, the European Commission actually said, okay, we're going to help the authorities and we're going to actually give funds to make this stop. So that's an example of something that is more legislative in that it's being actually formally submitted to the legislative branch of the government, but it can be very effective. One of the negatives of this is to have a formal petition, you generally have a very high threshold of signatures. It's not just the petition you kind of take door to door and you have 150 signatures. There's generally multiple thousands of signatures, but that being said, it's not impossible. So again, each country varies. I'm not sure, I think you guys represent sort of a breadth of countries within the Alpine region, but it does vary per country. So a good thing if you're trying to start a formal petition is to see how many signatures do I need to actually submit this to the courts. Obviously have a short and attractive title. And then, yeah, of course, like with any other campaign, you want people to want to sign, but there's different pros and cons for formal versus informal. Again, it seems like you guys are pros. You already probably know all of these things. You probably follow We Move, you know, change.org, but there are different sites, and these would be examples of informal petitions because anybody can sign them, but they can be transformed into formal petitions if you have enough signatures. So it's a good place to start. And if you're really interested in change, maybe you can get enough to cross that threshold and actually submit it to the legislative body. And then, yeah, European Citizens Initiative, this was basically something our founder started to minimize roaming charges in the EU, which he was actually quite successful with, but we won't go too in depth into that now. Political avenue, I think everyone thinks, okay, my campaign's political, right? But there's actually a very sort of set avenue, which is directly addressing politicians. So whereas our petitions and other things are sort of directly addressing legislators, the people who are working on the more judicial branch, these are actually addressing elected officials, politicians. So a classic example would be an open letter, an op-ed. Open letters can be very effective if you do them well, right? So you address a public official, and especially if you sort of target it well, if you're timing it right, if you're addressing it right, and if a physical letter, I think we can all agree might not necessarily be as effective now as an email. But I think the main thing is if you can publish it widely, whether it be on social media or in newspapers, if you have a well-targeted public letter, you can actually get some pretty good results. These are some basic guidelines. Again, I think you're probably a little bit pros, but these are some guidelines in terms of, you know, having a direct policy, a specific election. You don't want to write a letter just saying, I'm upset about climate change, right? You want to have a targeted idea with maybe a direct policy that might influence the politician. For instance, I live in France. So if there's an issue that's on the French political agenda for this upcoming election, it might be a much better time for an open letter than it would have been even 6 months ago, because these politicians' ears are basically turned on. So yes, the budget process, actions, you want to make sure that it's something concrete and it's not just basically a letter to the editor saying we're upset about something tangential. Again, in the spirit of time, I won't walk you through all of these, but we will send the slides. So this is a pretty good template in terms of if you are interested in writing an open letter. Once you've chosen your cause and you've targeted your politician, it's also best to have a specific politician in mind. You can send them to several, but don't just send them to, you know, every politician in France. And then this could walk you through, should you be interested in a bit more detail. Face-to-face meetings, which are a bit of a thing of the nostalgic past. I think now we could call them Zoom to Zoom meetings, but they're still equally important. It's a big deal to actually secure a meeting with a policymaker. Maybe it comes from your open letter, maybe it comes from your campaign, but if you're able to actually secure a one-on-one meeting or even a meeting with a team, that's amazing. So you need to be very, very tailored about how you engage with that policymaker, especially now on Zoom, because I think, you know, even as students, even me, sometimes we have a tendency to check out on Zoom. So it's not even like we're getting a physical coffee. So you have to come very, very prepared about how you're going to pitch your cause. So yeah, this is sort of the prep, which is you picked up the phone, you sent the call. The thing I would highlight the most here is a fact sheet. I think some of us dive so deep into our issue, we think that every single person is an expert on our issue, but odds are the person that you're Zooming with or you're meeting with, they probably have 4 other meetings that day. So it's very good to come with a little sheet that you either email ahead of time or hand to them if we can one day have an in-person meeting that basically says the most important things. It's kind of like a fact sheet you would have in a class. Note the most important things with very nice details supporting them, so that that person can basically read it and know exactly what you're talking about. Because we should never take for granted that every single person is as dialed in as we are for a respective cause. And then, yes, I think these things are fairly self-evident. You know, of course, you want to say, please, thank you. You want to have evidence-based facts. I won't bore you because I think obviously you guys are already very attuned to this, but it never hurts to sort of to reinforce, especially the evidence-based facts. It's very easy to get very emotional. And it's not to say that you shouldn't be emotional about your cause, but you're going to want to back it up with some real facts. I'm conscious of time, but I'm also conscious of how many things I'm throwing at you. So shall we take a brief pause and ask if anyone has questions sort of this far that we can't answer at the end? Feel free to-
In the part about the open letter, you said something about the budget process. What is meant by budget process?
Right, that's a very good question. So no matter where you're living, basically whether you're in a municipality or also at a national level, you're going to have a municipal or a national budget, right? And generally it's every 2 years or every 4 years. Those budgets are up for review. It tends to be in parallel to the elections, but those are the moments where the policymakers are revisiting how they're spending money. And there might be a moment where they're going to go and they're going to present basically a case to either spend more or less money on your cause, or maybe they're not even thinking about your cause, but they're going to present a budget, and it's your moment to sort of insert it into the budget. So it's a very good moment to sort of, if it's a good moment to do your homework, as we said on step 2, to see, is somebody talking about a cause I care about, and is it my moment to sort of say, yeah, we really want this to get this amount of money? Or is nobody talking about my cause, but they're about to try to figure out how to spend, a couple €1,000, and if I could really present it well, maybe they would spend it on this specific thing. Because that in between those cycles, it's very difficult from a bureaucratic perspective to have people allocate money. They pretty much allocate money when they have the decision being up for review. So you want to make sure that you're doing it at the correct moment, so that when the money is being sent, it's in line with what you're hoping to achieve. Does that make sense? Cool. Very good question, though. Okay, well, I was ahead of myself with the questions, but now we have the mark. If that makes sense, yeah. So what I would do now, I'm looking at the time. I think that was about 30 minutes. So what I would do is, as I said before, I'll explain the group exercise before we do it so that you have a bit of an idea in mind. It'd be great if you could pick something, there's a wide umbrella, but something that's relatively interesting to you. There's a reason you're here, representing this organization. So whether it be climate or economy, something that's interesting to you. And then I would reflect back on the different channels. I'll go back to the original slide that has all the different sort of avenues. And you can pick one of these. I know we went through really fast, but pick how you would address that issue, basically, whether it be through a campaign, a petition, an open letter, and just sort of brainstorm. I'm going to let you be divided into groups. I think 3 groups makes.
I have maybe Kelsey, before going to the exercise, I maybe would leave the space for presenting the EUSALP specifically designed lobbying activities, so Melanie and Natal can take a few minutes for doing this, and then do the exercise divided in groups. What do you think can work?
Oh yeah, perfect. Sorry, yes, go ahead and sort of dive into that'll be perfect segue.
Yeah, but the flow was, that's why the flow was good. That's why you continued. Melanie, Natal, are you ready for this? And the group, are you ready for this? They look good, ready.
Yes, we are. And then after we have a break, just to make sure. When I was in school, I was always the one asking for, like, when is the break? So that's what I'm asking
He's
again.
lobbying already, huh? He's putting into practice things.
Okay, so yeah, I can present then.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I will just start to give a little input while Natal is preparing the presentation. We would like just to give you a very brief input into, well, I think, and also many thanks to Kelsey. This was an extremely interesting input. It's so valuable to us to see how lobbying works in practice, because this is essentially, although lobbying sometimes sounds pretty negative, in the end, this is what we're doing. We are trying to convince people from our ideas. And also, of course, EUSALP is all about lobbying, because the states and regions in EUSALP are essentially trying to lobby for the interest of the Alps, which is, of course, a very specific thing within the European Union. You always have to convince others that the Alps are a very special place, and that we have special interests that have to be taken into account by the European Union. So how to lobby within EUSALP? I think Natal has prepared a little Mentimeter. So we would like to ask you to go on Mentikom and insert this code. and just answer one question. I hope it works for all of you. And the question would be, who in EUSALP do you need to convince a few ideas? So what do you think? Who would be the target of our joint lobbying youth council within the EUSALP?
You have the link in the chat, so it's also sometimes easier to join the Menti.
Do we already have some answers? Different institutions, action groups, state politicians, EU politicians, European representatives, General Assembly, action groups, board members. So some of you still remind EUSALP institutions, which is quite good.
Yeah, you can see they did their homework.
Yeah, they really did the homework. That's impressive.
Advised by Kelsey.
Executive board members, General Assembly. So yeah, you really did your homework. That's really cool. And I have to say that this sounds pretty realistic. I think you really grasped the main institutions in EUSALP that would be the main partners to implement our ideas or your ideas.
Government, schools, there's also schools. So
citizens.
Yeah. And then after there is another question with the this one, Melanie. Who can be helpful partners to implement them? So you can keep using Menti. I see tonight that you are very like active, so we enjoy and take the advantage of it and asking you questions. Companies.
This sounds like a pretty good mapping of all the relevant partners for the Youth Council, I guess. Scientists, politicians, universities, citizens, young people, local governments, youth organizations, citizens, NGOs. So apparently, I think we have a pretty good, already pretty good stakeholder mapping. So I think you understood the exercise very well. Maybe we can now give you just a few.
Yeah, so let me.
So thank you very much that you are so active today. This is really very much appreciated.
No, this is great. And I think it's really nice to think about who can help you implement. It comes down to when we were talking about sort of, unlikely coalitions, the same way that we have a preconception of lobbyists. It's sometimes we don't think about people that could help us. If you're only looking at NGOs, then maybe you're not looking for enough. So it was really good to see that such diverse answers.
Okay, so.
Okay, yeah, I think so too. It's really extremely helpful. We wanted to remind you once more of the main institutions within EUSALP, but I guess most of you still remember the main institutions. As we already presented you in the last modules, we have a political body, the General Assembly, we have the body of the Executive Board, and in these two bodies all the institutions are taken and 2 members of the Youth Council will participate. In these 2 bodies. There are the action groups, of course, the 9 action groups that are working on the 9 different topics. And there is the presidency, the annual, which changes annually, and which is giving the main priorities and topics of action. So this is, I think, the basic outline of institutions that will help you implement your ideas. And of course, within these institutions, there are the EUSALP states and regions. You can see it here on the map. which are the main, the 7 EUSALP member states and 48 EUSALP member regions that essentially will help you. And I guess especially we have already established a contact between you and your representatives in the different states and regions, which may be very important partners also in this regard. And finally, we have, of course, further partners, and I think you already outlined a lot of them. Different Alpine cooperation bodies, of course, like the Alpine Convention. We have other macro-regional strategies where some of them are establishing youth councils too. So I know, for example, that the Danube strategy wants to establish a youth council, which may be a very helpful and interesting partner for you. There are, of course, NGOs. You already mentioned them, local authorities, maybe also public figures, other young people. So I think you had even more ideas than we had. And I think it's very important to outline, Ruben has already asked, what are our main power resources? I think in EUSALP, the main power resource that we have, that each of us has, and that you have, is the network. Because, well, the EUSALP institutions, the EUSALP meetings, enable you to meet a lot of people from different states and regions, to meet the European Commission, European institutions, other states and regions, and also, of course, authorities, other strategies, Alpine cooperation bodies, and so on. And this network, I think this partnership is the most important resource that we are having. And if we can convince more partners of our ideas, then it can be really effective and we can hope to implement them, because essentially, we have to say EUSALP is all about networks and about networking. And this is something that can come for free. You just have to use the opportunities to network. And the next slide, you can just see that we have thought about some important things that we would like to submit you, just to give you an idea of how really lobbying in EUSALP can be very effective. So it is important, of course, to make your ideas, suggestions as concrete as possible, and to already think about how can you implement it, how can you mobilize money for it, who do you need, who do you have to convince, who could help you. Then it is important that you are not alone in this. We have a mentoring group, which consists of Tyrol, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, the European Commission, and the French presidency. And you have already get to know some of them. For example, today Karin is here from Switzerland, we from the Tyrol, of course, Alina from Liechtenstein, Pauline from the French presidency. You've all already get to know them during these modules. We are all on your side, so we are really particularly dedicated to help you, and we are always there. Please contact us when you have any ideas, questions, and we will, of course, also help you to get in touch with other institutions. So with our help, you can then get in touch with the individual countries, states and regions, other partners, of course, the action groups. We have 9 action groups that are dedicating to specific topics, and there are the experts on these topics, and they can, of course, help you to find further partners. They can give you very valuable feedback on your ideas. Please use them. I think this is a very important and valuable resource. And you can use, of course, all networking opportunities that we can offer you. Please use them, and always, of course, approach us as mentors. We will help you in any respect. Then the next point then would be then, of course, the presentation. So if you have tried to present your idea in a very concrete way, if you have tried to gather partners, to find partners, to network for your ideas, then we are offering you the opportunity to present your ideas in our formal institutional meetings. So 2 representatives of the Youth Council will be sitting in the Executive Board, and 2 will be sitting in the General Assembly. The next Executive Board meeting is in October, and the next General Assembly is on the 16th and 17th of December, where the EUSALP Annual Forum takes place in Nice, which is really the main forum for where all EUSALP stakeholders are meeting. So this would be the main place then also for you to present ideas. And of course, we will help you in organizing this presentation. And if you have any suggestions and ideas, it would be a very valuable opportunity there to present it also in front of course, all EUSALP politicians. And finally, have patience, of course. We are open to all of ideas, but of course, we all need to find partners and to convince them. So these are some hints that we wanted to give you on the basis of the very valuable input of Kelsey to make it even more concrete for EUSALP. Of course, we are very open to your suggestions, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. If you would like to add anything, please say anything. This is a very open forum. Otherwise, we will go into the break and then continue with the practical exercise, to which I'm very much looking forward.
I'll just add one quick thing, and then I'll let you go have a well-deserved coffee, which is we didn't have much time to dive into what pro bono legal assistance is, but it's one big thing we do at the Good Lobby that I think often people don't realize exists, which is if you've gone through all these steps and you have a wonderful coalition, but you really need legal assistance, we do it for free. So I will post our link to our form in the chat, but we really want people to be applying. We will literally put you with a professional lawyer and help you with some of these things that are very, very difficult to do without a lawyer. So it's just one step further in terms of the network, and also in terms of the support, is we have lawyers who are pros at this, and they will give you free assistance. So I let you go enjoy your coffee, and I'll post the link in the chat, but don't forget the fact that there are also people who can help you on some of these very technical things.
So if maybe Natal can stop sharing, if it's fine for everybody to come back at 7:11, so to give like 5, no more than 6-7 minutes to go grab a drink or something and just chill for a moment. We will stick to the timetable in order to finish at 8 sharp, because we don't want to keep you in front of the computer more than necessary. So if it's fine for everybody, it's like, let's meet at 7:10. Let's try at least. Okay, could it work? Okay, see you very, very soon.
See you.
Ciao.
Was it too fast? Sorry, I'm not used to having it so quick.
No, it was great. Actually, you managed to like put in pills all the contents that we imagined to offer them. So thank you very much.
Okay,
and
perfect.
Ruben is here. He's listening and he wants to say something.
Yes. No, it was very good from the speed. It was quick, but yeah. I have just one more question. And on your sheet, there is also just the route of the judicial route. Did I miss that explanation, or like you go over the courts? I can see how that can be, of course, something if you believe your project or something is just against the law, then why not go over the courts? But I didn't hear that explanation, so
sorry. Yeah, and we may have really sort of skimmed over the judicial part. Yeah, so the judicial part there, yeah, you can. We did skim over the judicial. Yeah, so, and this is again where we can come in, and that's actually what we do the most of at the Good Lobby, ironically. Like, we're basically, me included, we're all human rights lawyers, essentially. So the judicial part is, yeah, there's a very real, we didn't have time in the 30 minutes, but there's a very real lens, which is maybe not even being against the law, but if you're challenging a law, you can do lots of things. You can lodge a freedom of information request. You can actually lodge a complaint, either at the commission level or at a national level. This is a really good moment if you're interested. Do you have a project that's related sort of specifically to this?
I will start studying law in autumn, so I'm interested in it personally. Project wise, no, not really.
No, it's fine. Sorry, I'm realizing how much these slides sort of got dialed down, but no, there are a lot of judicial avenues. They're a bit more technical, and this is when we would basically say, yeah, you should contact us for pro bono. But you can lodge a formal complaint. You can file a subpoena. You can do lots of different things.
Sure.
Sorry, that's probably a very watered down response, but again, it was a very training. Again, if you're interested in this sort of thing.
Would you have any concrete example where in what campaign the course would be useful? Like you mentioned campaigns of Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. There, I can see how courts can be very useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, courts are a funny thing because they can be very useful and they can be somewhat less useful. So the campaign is actually an example of something that's not necessarily going to the courts. You submit your campaign, you submit your petition responses to a commission, but it's not necessarily the courts itself. So from a campaign perspective, It would be more sort of access to information, freedom of information request, the ombudsman, which is monitoring. And then what we do a lot of, which we didn't have time to go into, is something called strategic litigation, which is basically filing a lawsuit for the principle of the matter. It sounds silly, but like, for instance, do you remember the Shell decision that just happened in the Netherlands?
No, not really.
I'm sorry, I'm okay, hold on. I'm gonna share my screen again, even though you're the last one. Is it fine if I share it again, even if you...
No problem, but what I'm saying is that, I mean, the session is still being recorded as there was a question, but as we are still in the break, maybe there is a thing that maybe somebody else would like to also see. So can I ask you to wait for 2 minutes, the people to come back to like recap this and grab it back so that
Sure.
at least everybody else can also enjoy it, just to mention this.
I think I'll put it on pause and I'll pull up some other slides. Again, apologies. We could do a 5-hour training for this.
I would be there for that training.
I have some slides that I think would be interesting, and yeah, we can share them briefly when you get back. Also, maybe
in 1 minute, by the way. I mean, people are coming back, so.
No, it's fine.
Don't worry, Ruben. We will never complain if you are very active and participating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It's
not to miss the chance. I mean, the session is recorded in any case, but at least everybody else can also listen to your question, and maybe can be useful for many more than to be shared.
Yeah,
I can be a little bit much, so whatever happens, you can tell me. That's no problem.
Everyone told me I used to be a little bit much too, and now I
we want people to ask questions, and we want people to ask also tackle questions, very, very targeted. So why not? Welcome.
and you leave some spaces for the others to also talk. It's okay. I mean, and I'm sure you are aware of it, and you will take care of everybody can speak, so that's fine.
Well, and this is why I wanted to emphasize, if you're really curious, you know, I'll give you my email, and you can ask more specific questions after. But I'll do a couple more slides from a different presentation actually that are a bit more in depth on these, and then I'll let you all break free into your groups. But again, this is intended to sort of be like an intro, and if you have a lot of follow-up questions and you're starting law, then be in touch.
Okay, perfect.
Go have a coffee or something. You don't have to. But okay, I think we're back now. Okay. Okay. So yeah, welcome back. I think we have most people here. So over the break, there were a couple questions that were actually raised, which were very good questions, about some of the avenues that maybe we didn't dive into quite as in depth. So if I'm not exploding your brains on this Thursday evening, I might take 2 minutes to sort of dive into these. I promise it'll be about 5 minutes worth of slides, and then we'll explain the group activity. And then, as I've said, if you have questions about any of it, feel free to come back to me at a later date. The idea is not to sort of overload you, but I will share a few more slides based on this. Okay, so is everyone back and sort of refreshed? You had an espresso and you're ready to dive back in? Cool. So very, very briefly, to go into a bit more formal on the administrative and the judicial complaints. Administrative would be much more linked to freedom of information requests. I won't go into all of these, but the idea is, believe it or not, you can actually lodge one of these. I did it just last week on something completely tangential. You have basically the right to know about what decisions are being made, whether it be regional, national, at the EU level. So you can actually lodge a freedom of information request. I did it all the way back home in Colorado. You can do it to the commission. You can do it you can find lists of meetings. You can see basically what people are doing, which is quite useful. And it's pretty much exploded, as you can see from this graph. It used to be a bit more niche, but now with internet and the data the way it is, you can actually, it's a pretty amazing way to see what people are doing. So I won't, again, I promised a couple slides, so I'm not diving into these. We had a question that was more related to what avenues do we have on a more judicial level. And what I'd like to highlight, which is actually something that's one of my pet projects, I have a background in human rights law. And I'm working on environmental law now. So strategic litigation is this really cool thing which is basically being able to create a lawsuit, which might not necessarily be within the boundaries of the law itself, but it's doing it to prove a point, essentially. It's saying we are creating this lawsuit on behalf of citizens. It tends to be heavily supported by citizens to basically create a new precedent. So what we've done at the Good Lobby as a classic example was we stepped in to help save this forest in Poland. They were trying to log in a UNESCO heritage site, and there was 120,000. This is an example of how these different avenues sort of bleed into one another, right? So it started out as a petition, and then it was transformed into a more judicial avenue because we took the petition and we actually partnered with this group called Client Earth, and we demanded that the European Commission take action. And at the end of the day, we actually were successful in having them not log this forest. So that's one example of strategic litigation, but very briefly, the next example, which I think you'll be more familiar with, is this happened just I'm losing track of time, but I think it was 2 months ago, was the Netherlands saying that Shell actually has to cut their emissions. They were claiming to be meeting all of this net zero 2050 things, and the physical courts of the Netherlands, based again on a citizen-led petition with Client Earth, said you're not doing enough. Not only are you not doing enough, if you don't do more, we're going to sue you and we're going to fine you. So this is a really concrete and cool, in my little lawyer nerd heart, way of sort of putting pressure on people, and it's really citizen-led, but it's gone exclusively through the courts. It is a long process, and this is another moment where I would say to use pro bono assistance, as I put in the chat. Like if you're interested in doing something through a judicial avenue, it's very good to be supported by an actual lawyer, if not an army of lawyers, because that's what the other guy will have, such as Shell. But there are really interesting things that are going on right now that are basically court cases that are putting essentially these groups on trial in a sort of interesting way. And that's what strategic litigation really is. So if you're interested in learning more about some of these judicial avenues or in taking part in some of these things, I would urge you to sort of reach out to us through the form that I put in the chat or through other ways, because there's a lot going on, and I think we're going to see more and more, especially on an environmental sort of perspective. But they're not necessarily the easiest thing to start. It would be much easier to start with a campaign. You don't start with a strategic litigation necessarily, but it's a cool thing to be aware of and to sort of leverage. But again, conscious of time, I won't deep dive into strategic litigation. I will plug that the Good Lobby, we do have online trainings. We had a strategic litigation training, I think 2 months ago, and we'll have another one in the fall. So and they're free and they're public. So if you're interested, if you're reading this and you're really interested in learning more about strategic litigation, keep an eye on our socials, and we will, you can register for our next one, which walks you through this in much more detail. I'll probably leave it there for the sake of brevity. I see some questions in the chat. Can we find information on your website? Yes, I will leave you with my email and our website. And again, on our socials is where we announce sort of our more public trainings, but I'll also give you my email if you have questions about the exercise. And yeah, keeping an eye, I would say more on socials than the website. And you can find, I put the Good Lobby, the form that I put is one to request legal assistance. So that's if you sort of already have your project and you're like, okay, I'm ready to take it to the next level. But yeah. Shall we move into the next part? Okay, great. So coming back to sort of the core of today, based on all of this information that I've thrown at you, and I'm sure you're digesting, I hope you all had time for a coffee or a tea or something. I think it would be really cool to have you break into groups, which I believe that we're going to break you into breakout groups. And what I would ask, hold on, let me share screen again. I would ask you to pick one of the avenues and then apply it basically to a cause. I'm going to pull them up on the screen so it's more present.
I can rename the rooms and let them pick in case.
Great. You could pick the rooms or you can pick your cause. Like it's pretty, you know, these, like I said, these things sort of apply to the cool thing about being a citizen lobbyist is it applies to lots of things. You know, I care about migration and climate change, but you can apply it to pretty much anything. So building on what we've talked about, pick one of these things and just think about a cause you'd like to apply it to, and take a little bit to sort of discuss as a group. It doesn't have to be, I mean, I'm not going to make you go to court and apply it necessarily, but I'm always really interested in hearing how you would sort of put this into your work or your goals. And you can come to us with questions, and then we'll try to debrief as time allows. And as I said, as time, if we run out of time, please don't hesitate to send us an email, because at the Good Lobby, we really are interested in sort of this exact thing.
Kelsey, just one question. Maybe we want to give a few hints, so that actually I have prepared 3 rooms, but I left them the possibility to choose. Do we want maybe to brainstorm for 1 second about the 3 main topics to deal with? Maybe the group can quickly brief on this.
Yeah,
I mean, climate change can be one easily, but
yeah, I think so, but I would say I would say one could do climate change, one could do sort of economic, the way that the EU is giving economic funds for the recovery, and one would be innovation in all of its forms. Do you have something more specific that you're more interested in?
Sorry.
I was going to say social innovation, climate change, and economic recovery, but I'm very flexible on whatever people are interested in.
I think some of us are really interested in public transports within the Alps.
Beautiful, do it.
Like mobility.
Great. Like in social innovation or in recovery fund? How do you feel it, Louise?
Yeah, maybe in social innovation, even if it's more like a state, political / state problem.
I think also
even recovery from COVID, or what exactly recovering from?
Well, I was thinking recovery funds, because there's all these recovery funds that are being basically injected into these regions, and you get to use them, appropriately. But I would emphasize to be sort of, flexible. If one group of you is really interested in transport, then go for it.
I can prepare a 4th room that is related to pandemic consequences or something like this, if this is a topic. And I'm opening them. I left 10 minutes, but we can leave it, like we can come back and you can, for example, change after 10 minutes to try something different in case. Or also you are free to join them. You find them on the top part of your screen. You can see the list and join some of them. I see somebody's already moving. It should be easy, but if you cannot, just tell me in which room and I will address you.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. And if you have questions, it's more just applying things to something you're passionate about. You don't have to, we won't ask you to present the whole pitch. It's more just to sort of hear how you would be interested in applying this.
Thank you, Aaron. I mean, feel free to join a group in any case. I can, if you want to share which is the topic, I can send you there and you can listen about the topic if you want. I know you're driving and I don't want to distract you from that.
Sorry, just maybe because I'm with my iPad and I'm not able to see the page, if you can share it.
The page, you mean the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, because I can see here, so I don't know where to go maybe to see it.
Actually, it was shared, but now it's not available anymore. But we can send you a screenshot of it. We can ask Kelsey to prepare a screenshot and we can share it in the groups.
Okay, because I don't know where to go to speak with a group.
Okay.
You can join a group from an iPad. I'll take a screenshot now of the
Thank
app.
you. If you want to share it just with me, I'm gonna have or you can go in the groups and share it directly. So Ludovic is climate change. Ira, you have a topic specifically that you would like to join? Climate change, recovery fund, social innovation, pandemic.
It will be better for me, climate change.
Let's go.
I think if I share it to the chat, then it goes to everyone. I think that's the easiest.
Yes. Not sure that if I share it if you share it now in the chat as they are in the breakout room.
I think it does, but let's double check it if it doesn't.
Okay.
Because what I think is when you share it in the breakout rooms, they don't see it always.
I guess normally you can broadcast a message to all the rooms. There is something
Yes.
like this.
You
I
can,
don't
but
know.
it goes away.
It's not sending
Ah.
files.
It just-
Victorine, do you have any preference on topics?
No, I didn't have a preference.
Do you want to go to climate change group, recovery fund, or social innovation and mobility?
Mobility, maybe.
Okay, cool. See you later. Aaron.
Aaron, he's driving, so
Social
he will just
innovation. No,
listen.
he picked
Yeah.
one. Thank you. See you there. Okay. I'm trying to go and see if they received it in the chat. Maybe Gianluca, can I send you to another group to do the same?
Yes, my connection is not the best, but yeah.
Or do you need my help, Ilaria?
Yeah,
I can do it.
if each of us is going to, you can download the screenshot. I'm sending you to one of the groups that is, for example, social innovation, and you can share the file with them during the talk.
I think let's. Okay. I'll pop in climate change.
Gianluca, I'm sending you to Recovery Fund.
So I'm just downloading the screenshot,
yes,
and then.
cool.
What are we doing in the groups? Are we?
They're actually trying to think of these topics on the perspective of the different. Can you see the screenshot of the page that she gave?
It does not work for the moment.
The lobby kit, so kind of which are the campaigns, the legislative approach, the administrative approach, the judicial and political approach that they can actually apply to these topics to achieve the results.
Okay, but I can't open the screenshot. Does it work for you?
Yes, it works. I can share my screen so that you can see it.
Didn't seem like it worked.
Kelsey, did you manage?
Yeah, I went in, but they said they don't see the
yeah,
screen.
So you share it again with them?
Yeah, I couldn't share it just within the breakout room.
Okay, then I'm gonna put it in the drive and I can send the drive if it's not working this way.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Sorry about that.
No. Hey, no problem. Melanie, can you see it?
Yes, I'm just making a screenshot.
Okay.
And I can then also share the screenshot with them.
Okay.
Because I can't download it.
But it's, I can put it in Drive and send them the link to the Drive folder so that they can also access it completely easily.
Okay.
Perfect. That should work. They seem okay. They were all chatting.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, they were taking notes. I saw them.
Yeah, and I'll share the slides afterwards. But yeah, sometimes
yeah,
have a little reminder.
Okay. So.
Okay, you can send me in a group if you want to.
Okay. Where do you want to go? Climate change, social innovation, recovery fund.
Where I'm more useful, I guess there are some people already. Yeah, Natalia and Gianluca are already in the other groups. I guess.
But I don't know if they're coming back or they're just going there to send the screenshot.
Okay. Okay. I mean, if I'm not needed there, I can also.
No. I mean,
stay here.
More than welcome to join any of these. Natal is in the biggest group. There is the recovery fund and climate change to choose.
Okay, so they all three groups have the screenshot.
At the moment, they're working.
Okay.
Just a thing, Ila, I downloaded the file, but I cannot open it.
Gianluca?
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
The file does not open.
Okay, I'm gonna upload it in Drive.
Drive.
In 1 second, in Drive. So you can share the Drive link that I'm posting now. Can you see it?
Is it in 29th of July login?
Yes, I'm uploading it now. You should see it now. Can you do the tour of the groups, Jean-Luc?
I could. Just one second. Yes.
Grazie.
Okay, yeah, you can send me a replay. I can go as well.
Okay. Melanie, do you want to visit any group?
I was just curious.
You're muted. You're muted.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, of course I can go in a group. Should I then stay in the group until the end, or what? How do you?
Actually, it's 1 minute to them to come back.
Okay, then let's go.
You can listen what they are discussing because they might be finalizing the thing. I'm sending you to climate change, Dai.
Okay, and then you will stop automatically. Okay.
It will stop, yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe we can mute Timothy.
Yeah, hello. We know it was really short. So like I said, no pressure, but I was just saying my favorite part of this is hearing everybody's ideas and wonderful brainstorming. So even though it was a little bit short, if maybe you could sort of identify yourselves as a group and pick one person to sort of present your ideas, that would be wonderful.
Okay, Ilaria, we start with which group then?
The one who prefers.
Yeah, if anyone wants to volunteer, even better, but otherwise we're going to start calling. There's only 3, so 4.
I know somebody's there.
I can start if you want.
Go, Louise.
Okay, so basically we chose two different options. The one would be, because we were working on mobility and social innovation. So the first path we chose was the legislative way, because we thought that it would be maybe possible to make a rule within all the Alpine area that national transportation companies and networks would have like a connection with all the others, and that it would be possible to buy, for example, a ticket in France for Austria, or make it much easier for people to travel and to buy and buy their tickets, sorry. And the other possibility would be more on a political level, to network with politicians, but also with transportation companies, because transportation companies in many countries are semi-private. So the state is a great stakeholder in their executive board. So it would be a two-way path between politics and networking with private companies.
That's great. I love that. And I like the way that you're already thinking about the public versus private and the way you can bridge it. That's super, super interesting. Very good job. Can I ask a little bit more about how you envisioned that people would be buying the pass, like a little bit more about the process?
Yes, of course. I think it's the AG4 of EUSALP that is already working on this topic. It's a group, a working group that is called Linking Alps, and they're working on making a single app or a single platform, online platform for all the Alpine region, so that there would be the schedule, also the possibility to buy tickets in the entire Alpine region. And we had some of us met already with them, and they say it's very complicated, but the young people could also push for that and show that we have a lot of interest in that topic.
Great.
Yeah. In
Wonderful.
fact, there is already like some kind of pilot project with another youth council. It's the CIPRA Youth Council. It's called Alptic, and the project won the picture project competition of EUSALP 3 years ago. And so yeah, there is also, they can of course take advantage of this group of young people who have a lot of experience in this topic, and also with the action groups number 4. So.
Awesome, super cool. I see Ludovic has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm in contact as well with Alpine Initiative, which is only a Swiss initiative for sure, but it's a good model, I think. They are alive since 1994 in Switzerland, and they are promoting the railway transport instead of the truck transportation in Switzerland. So it could be an idea as well for mobility. And just regarding the path that you were mentioning, I think Protect Our Winter France is working on that, and Protect Our Winter Europe is really deep in these topics, especially mobility. That's what the role they took within Europe, a bit different than the one they have in US or in Canada, for example. But this association could be our allies too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be more and more of a push, obviously, towards mobility is very linked to the, our ability to actually go to the mountains if these things aren't working. So very good point. Who is the brave number 2?
Come on.
I can, otherwise.
Yes, go for it. Thank you.
So we thought, or Eva had the good suggestion that, our group was recovery funds, and we thought that we would leave COVID and the whole topic of that aside for a moment and concentrate on helping regions in the Alpine countries who are a little bit less developed than other areas to recover from that disadvantage. So we talked especially about Slovenia and how we could help there. All of our suggestions are probably would go over the government, over the legislative route. But how to get government to do it, all the other ways could also be applied. So my first suggestion was that to create sustainable generational wealth in those areas, it would be important to create maybe a law that requires banks to give out loans with low interest rates to young people so they can maybe buy homes, because with home ownership, they can have their family there. Also, it helps against brain drain. About a lot of Slovenia has very good education, but the well-educated people then go on to work in other countries where they earn more. But if they have a house, or have the possibility of having a house and a family, that would be probably quite interesting for them to stay and create wealth in those areas. Then Timothy recommended that we bind some social conditions to those funds that require people, not those funds, but generally with funds supporting new businesses and just general development, that they have to prove that they use the money responsible, and so that the community really profits from it and it doesn't go somewhere into some other country. Then Eva again suggested that we give young people land or for a lower price, or just give it to them so that they can use that land to either grow crops, supporting the regional economy, or to make something out of that land, build businesses there, also appreciate their country and their region more. And then again, Eva pointed out that we should just create a bridge between the people there and maybe and the rest of Europe, so that investment can flow from the richer areas into the places where it is most needed. Yeah, that would be
Thank
it.
you. No, those are no worries. I'm also on a hotspot for God knows what reason, but it's going pretty well. No, those are really good. I like the idea. I think we're all very sort of COVID fatigued. I know I am. So I think, but I would caution against sort of, you know, separating the recovery funds from COVID. But of course, at the end of the day, of course, we want to make sure that they're being implemented in a way that really benefits the region. So I think you had some really good ideas. I like the idea of sort of celebrating the region. I love the idea of having intergenerational poverty broken, but I think it's a very complex idea to sort of break down in one session. But I love the idea that it was even sort of breached. And I do think we're seeing, without a doubt, with the Farm to Fork and some of these other initiatives, the idea that we are celebrating regions sort of in their own specificity rather than having them sort of, you know, adhere to what the EU sometimes does. So I think you've touched on a lot of really important points, a lot of big ideas. Again, like I said, I don't think any of us are going to solve all these problems in one webinar, but I love that you hit on them. So it's a very nice job to your group, and yeah, wonderful. Everybody's going to speak, so either you're going to go next or you're going to go last.
Okay, I'll go.
Perfect. There we go.
We talked about a problem in the region of Camellia, but probably in many regions right now, that the farmers use more pesticides and fertilizers due to climate change. And they already started a petition that is already running, and we spoke about what else we could do, or what else could be done. So what we first thought of was also the legislative path to, on one hand, speak to local politicians to, I mean, of course, they cannot give away that much money or anything, but to, for example, make it easier for the farmers to, build some facilities that they might need if they want to change their production to organic production, stuff like that. And also to, approach the European Union, some national politicians that are more responsible for maybe giving back some funds or financial aids for changing the production from non-organic to organic. And then what we also thought of was campaigning, and which would be not the legislative path. On one hand, just speak to the local community, because it's always good to get more people on your side and that support your idea, and tell them on how dangerous some of these fertilizers or stuff could be, a pesticide. And on the other hand, also go to the farmers themselves and for example, show them bring someone some positive example. So maybe a farmer that already implemented organic farming and that is successful with it, and so that they know, that they see how it could be. That's basically it, I hope. I mean, you can add something if I forgot it, Camilla, or...
Yeah, sorry, I missed the
the pitch because my hotspot is lagging. I don't know why. Sorry.
No, I think the pitch was awesome. What I really like is the idea, because I think sometimes, especially when, like I said, we work in the Brussels bubble, I love the idea, you know, to really engage, you need to be working with people on the ground. And it doesn't even necessarily mean bringing a positive idea, but I like the idea that you're doing the twofold. It's kind of what we try to do at Good Lobby. We need to be trying to have policies, which would be then, of course, you know, having less harmful pesticides, but it's never going to work if the farmers on the ground are not on board. And I think you want to not treat people like they're sort of second class. So I love the idea that you're going to the farmers, you want to show them the positive examples. I think that's the type of citizen engagement that we really want. And it's not always successful, so I won't sugarcoat it, but I love the idea that you're thinking of that sort of two-pronged approach, that you have the legislation that's going to change, which is maybe the big scary, pesticide change, which we've seen didn't go over very well in the last legislation. And then the idea that you're really engaging with people on the ground. So that's a really nice way to approach it, I think. So bravo. Last group on. There's only one of you, so you can't even hide.
I think that there were only 3 groups, so we had them all. Yeah, because the life after pandemic in the end wasn't a thing. So
fair enough. We're all very tired of talking about
other things also. So I want to thank you very much, Kelsey, because I know that you had to go like 10 minutes ago.
I do have to go.
Really like stretch the time. You are a time lord or time lady, I would say, that you managed to actually stay with us until the very end. So thank you very much for being with us today. And I'm sure that you can leave in the chat maybe the email address. And in any case, we will have the slides where you can have also the contacts. So don't worry, we will not miss Kelsey. She will be available for you whenever you feel to get in touch for further information or curiosity or questions also after reading and checking again the slides.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. I am going to run. I put my email in the chat, but as she said, we'll share the slides. So wonderful meeting all of you. And I was really inspired by your projects. That's why I stayed so late, because they were wonderful. But I am going to pop off. But yes, don't worry, and we'll be in touch very soon. So thank you so much. Ciao.
Grazie again. Thank you very much again.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
We know that we had a plan that foresee to have a full insight on the next step of our sessions, because this season is gone, but the next one is about to come, which is the season for meeting in person, finally. With some of you, not to say Eva, we already met in person, and it was a nice experience to finally see like a body beyond the face. That's a very nice element that we were missing a lot. And this is gonna happen the 27, 28, and 29 of August. I think that you are also as thrilled as we are, as excited to finally meet each other after months of meeting online. So I'm just quickly showing you in absolute insight, so not yet a published official program, but you have the draft of what is going to happen in these days in Innsbruck, Austria.
Ah, beautiful. Will you be at Alpen? There's a summit. No.
Yes. We are going to meet with the group to continue the team building activity, because the Youth Council will start their activity. So we are going to meet, the meeting is set to be in Innsbruck before 2 o'clock, because at 2 o'clock local time, we're going to be meeting in a meeting point that you don't know yet, and we will find out soon. There will be some exploration of the city. We will have the chance to reconnect with the group and with the topics. You know that we are still going to discuss about serious stuff like EUSALP, but also have fun. There will be a meeting with an official institutional representative, which is Sophia Kircher, Deputy Parliament President of Tyrol. She's 24, Melanie, am I right?
Yes, she's extremely young, and she's already a deputy parliament president, and we will talk to her, and we will have the opportunity to talk to her and ask her anything about how to get engaged in politics, in decision making as a young person. I think she has a lot to tell about this, and you can of course ask her all the questions you have.
So there will be some moment in the evening. We thought also to dedicate some evening activities, but yes, of course, there is some space for suggestions. Of course, we have a lot of inputs to share with you, but feel free to join also for night activities. We were thinking of stuff, but in case you have ideas, feel free to reach out via email. We can absolutely adapt and include more stuff. The idea is that also there you will have space for open moments to share. So thank you, Ludovic, for the question. Saturday, we thought of Saturday morning to dedicate the morning to run an activity, but to do it outdoor. So there will be a short walk. We promise this won't be a big deal, like for I don't know if you have issues with knees or ankles or other issues, but just bring some good, comfortable shoes and clothing, because the idea is to have a nice walk in the woods, because the venue where we're gonna stay is literally 3 steps away from the woods. So we'll have a little bit in the morning an exploration of the surroundings and have the chance to actually exercise a little bit with an activity that we in our organization develop, which is called Speaker's Corner. You'll find out more, no more spoiler for now. Most likely we're gonna be back for lunch, but we are still deciding whether we want to, maybe you can also give us an idea if we want to have a packet lunch and stay outside. But the idea is that the afternoon will be dedicated to drafting the Youth Council agenda, so setting priorities and topics finally to see what are the plans for the year to come, and to also set some guidelines and principles to better cooperate as a group, and also with the outside stakeholders, as we were discussing about these stakeholders a lot. Sunday, that's the moment where we imagine to keep it as an open space, to leave you also like a group in working groups according to topics, as we just did in this moment. Also to share new ideas and activities, some like elements to maybe introduce that so far hasn't come up, but during these days together, maybe you like your ideas will flourish. We will again discuss about communication, how to improve these and how to make it more efficient, and to have a moment to have an evaluation of the overall process that we face. So this process and the team building activity that we'll be doing. We consider this to be a little bit as a whole flow. So the 4 modules that we followed will somehow help also to shape the activities of the team building. So feel free, in case you missed some, to maybe have a look at the video recording of the session, or just have a check of what we've done, just to remember what we did. And we imagine that Sunday after lunch, everybody will be then free to go. So that also when you want to plan your trip, to take into account to leave after maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm done with the presentation, and you will find this picture in the common drive where you share the folder with everything shared. I'm wondering if you have questions, if I have to keep the screen, or if I can remove it and just see your faces and maybe check if there is any question about this.
I think you can stop sharing the screen, yeah, and we can discuss if there is a question.
Oh, in 2 minutes instead of 20, so it was.
Yeah, no, but just I created the channel on Slack for the organization of the team building. So of course you can ask questions on the Slack, especially about the travel, because this is, as we discussed in the mobility breakout room, it's not easy to travel from France to Innsbruck or from Slovenia to Innsbruck. So some of you might need to come 1 day earlier, because there is no connection to manage to be on time on Friday. So just inform us and we will book a youth hostel or a room for you in Innsbruck the day before, the night before, but of course we have to be informed. And for the ones that doesn't use Slack, I mean, it's time to try it, or I will of course send emails or on WhatsApp as well, on the WhatsApp group. So yeah, if you have questions, don't hesitate.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I'm not sure whether I understood it, but will we all stay together in like a hotel or like in one place, or? So
yeah, Melanie, you can answer. Melanie.
Yeah. So we've booked the Grillhof, which is a venue on a little hill above Innsbruck, so it's not very far from Innsbruck. We will all stay there, so we have booked single rooms for all of you. If you are arriving later, of course, there is of course always a possibility to join us at this venue, because there is a very good bus line that is also going into the night. So, for example, Jan from Germany has already informed me that he will only arrive at 1 o'clock in the night on Friday because he has to work. But he can, of course, also enter the venue. There will be a possibility to enter the venue also in the night. Yes, Ilaria has posted a link. So yeah, the venue is not very difficult to reach, but we will all meet together at 2 o'clock on Friday and go there together if you can be there.
If you don't have more questions related to the program, consider that we can still accept some comments and remarks on these and suggestions. Perhaps we can give a deadline that can be like until the 7th or 8th of August, so 1 week so far, to imagine if you have something very, very specific that needs like a whole session to debate and discuss, we can also imagine that at the moment it is a quite flexible plan. Still consider that, as I mentioned, for example, Sunday morning, this is meant to be an open space. So if you have something that is maybe requiring more time, we can consider to dedicate Sunday morning to parallel sessions. If you have something specific that you need to discuss, maybe in smaller groups, this can also be an option that we offer you. And also in the making, if you are there, the space will be always open to say, okay, can we, I don't know, have a little bit extra time before or after the afternoon activity to include some topics in the thing. Me and Gianluca will be there facilitating the activity, so we'll be more than happy to welcome any other elements that you would like to introduce, as well as Natalie and Melanie will be with us as official Youth Shaping EUSALP representatives. And also don't forget that some representatives of each country will join us in some days or maybe for the whole sessions. So there will be also space perhaps to dedicate some moment to ask them questions, to have maybe a session of question and answers. That, of course, we need to agree with them before, but there is it's one of the easiest ideas that came to actually dedicate a moment of informal talk with them to clarify some issues and maybe start at the best with more information as possible for you all.
Okay, I guess we're good. I would just want to say a big thank you for your participation this evening, and also for the participation through all the month of July. It's a real pleasure to have you on board, and yeah, Melanie and I and Ilaria and everybody are really happy to have you and to meet you in Innsbruck at the end of the month. And we always remain at your disposal if you have any questions, if you have any requests. So yeah, don't hesitate. Melanie, you always have the last word, so I give you the floor.
Okay. Well, no, thank you very much. We were so happy to see you today, and I'm so excited to see you in Innsbruck, to welcome you in Innsbruck. Please don't hesitate, as always, to ask us any questions. I will also meet with the Deputy President of the Tyrolean Parliament next week. We will also prepare your meeting with her. If you have anything that you would like to discuss with her, let us know, of course. And if you have any suggestions or remarks, we are very open and flexible, and we are very happy. Yeah, because in the end, all of these activities and meetings are made to, yeah, for you to ease your way in the youth council. So of course, your active participation is very well appreciated. And thank you very much that you took the time for all these modules. And that you and for all your contributions. It's so cool to see your great ideas and your participation. It's really motivating for us. Thank you.
Again, don't forget that we are still running these summer modules. So in case some of you would like to join, feel free to get in touch, because we are still looking for participants for Switzerland next week. Italy September, and Liechtenstein and Germany in September as well. So feel free to reach out and ask us for more, because we can't wait to have you on board. Eva participated yesterday, and it seemed to be a nice experience for her, from what she can say with her own words, but that's a warm invitation to join us. And with that, I greet you all and stop the recording, and I leave the floor if somebody wants to unmute and say hello.